They thought they could bully me by cutting off my land access, but they didn't know I had a trap hidden in my deed that would turn their HOA power grab into their worst nightmare. Stick around to see how I flip the script on their petty tyranny. If you love epic HOA takedowns and Karen meltdowns, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next chapter of this wild property drama. Let's dive into the chaos. The sun beat down on the quiet cul-de-sac of Willow Creek, a pristine suburban enclave where every lawn was manicured to perfection and every mailbox bore the stamp of HOA approval. For years, the Willow Creek Homeowners Association ruled with an iron grip, enforcing rules on everything from fence heights to the acceptable shade of beige for front doors. Most residents complied, grumbling under their breath but too afraid of fines or public shaming to resist. But not Ethan Caldwell. Ethan, a retired civil engineer with a penchant for reading fine print, had moved to Willow Creek 2 years ago, drawn by the promise of a peaceful retirement on his 5-acre lot at the edge of the neighborhood. His property was unique. It wasn't just another cookie-cutter house, but a sprawling parcel with a private access road that cut through HOA-controlled land to reach the main street. That road was the key to his sanctuary, and the HOA had just made the fatal mistake of trying to take it away. Ethan had always been a meticulous man, the kind who kept every receipt, archived every email, and read every contract twice. When he bought the property, he'd noticed an obscure clause buried deep in the deed, a clause the HOA had signed off on decades ago when the land was first developed. It stipulated that any attempt to restrict access to his private road without his consent would trigger a reversionary interest, effectively transferring a portion of the HOA's common land back to his ownership. At the time, it seemed like a quirky legal footnote, something to chuckle about over coffee. But Ethan, with his engineer's mind, saw it for what it was, a landmine waiting for someone foolish enough to step on it. He'd kept that knowledge tucked away, never mentioning it to the HOA board during their monthly meetings or the endless stream of compliance letters they sent his way. The trouble began 6 months ago when the HOA, led by its president, Barbara Hensley, decided Ethan's private road was an eyesore. The gravel path, functional and unobtrusive, didn't meet their aesthetic standards. Barbara, a woman whose smile never reached her eyes, had a vision of transforming Willow Creek into a gated utopia, complete with paved roads, ornamental streetlights, and a grand entrance sign. Ethan's road, winding through a corner of the HOA's common land, didn't fit her plan. Without consulting him, the board voted to block the road's entrance with a decorative gate and reroute all traffic through a new, HOA-controlled access point. They sent Ethan a curt letter informing him of the change, citing community standards and property value enhancement. The gate went up overnight, a gaudy wrought iron monstrosity that cut Ethan off from his own land. He could no longer drive to his house without passing through the HOA's new checkpoint, where a security guard demanded his ID and logged his comings and goings. Ethan's blood boiled. But he didn't storm into the next HOA meeting with a pitchfork. Instead, he went to his study, pulled out his copy of the deed, and reread the clause. A slow smile spread across his face. The HOA had just triggered the trap they'd unknowingly signed decades ago. He spent weeks preparing, consulting a lawyer friend who confirmed the clause was airtight. The reversionary interest was clear. If the HOA restricted his access without permission, a 10-acre parcel of their precious common land, home to their clubhouse, tennis courts, and community pool, would revert to Ethan's ownership. He didn't act immediately. He let the HOA dig their hole deeper, documenting every violation, every smug letter, every time Barbara Hensley's voice dripped with condescension at meetings. They thought they'd won, that Ethan was just another resident who'd bend under their rules. They were wrong. By the time the next HOA meeting rolled around, Ethan had his plan in place. He arrived early, dressed in his usual flannel shirt and jeans, carrying a manila folder stuffed with papers. The board members, perched at their long table like a council of petty monarchs, barely acknowledged him. Barbara, in her signature pastel blazer, droned on about new landscaping initiatives while residents nodded obediently. Ethan sat in the back, silent, his folder unopened on his lap. He didn't need to speak yet. The HOA was about to learn the cost of their arrogance, and Ethan was content to let them savor their false victory a little longer. The meeting adjourned with the usual self-congratulatory applause, and Ethan slipped out quietly, his mind already racing toward the next step. The trap was set, and the HOA was walking straight into it. Ethan spent the next month gathering evidence. He photographed the gate blocking his road, recorded timestamps of his attempts to access his property, and saved every email from the HOA dismissing his complaints. His lawyer, a sharp-witted woman named Clara, helped him draft a formal notice invoking the reversionary clause. The notice was a masterpiece of legal precision, citing the exact deed provision and demanding the immediate removal of the gate. If the HOA failed to comply within 30 days, the 10-acre parcel would legally transfer to Ethan's ownership. He sent the notice certified mail, ensuring Barbara and the board couldn't claim ignorance. The response came quickly, a snarky letter from the HOA's attorney, a man named Gerald, who seemed to think Ethan was bluffing. Gerald's letter called the clause outdated and unenforceable, threatening legal action if Ethan pursued it. Ethan read the letter and chuckled. Gerald clearly hadn't done his homework. The 30-day deadline approached and the HOA showed no signs of backing down. Barbara rallied the neighborhood, spinning a tale of Ethan as a rogue homeowner trying to undermine their community. She organized a petition to protect Willow Creek's values, convincing residents that Ethan's resistance was a threat to their property values. Most didn't question her. They signed without reading the fine print, just as the HOA had done years ago. Ethan, meanwhile, was busy. He hired a surveyor to map the 10-acre parcel, confirming its boundaries overlapped with the HOA's prized amenities. He also reached out to a local journalist, a friend of a friend, who was intrigued by the story of a lone homeowner taking on a tyrannical HOA. The journalist began digging, uncovering a history of Barbara's overreach, fines for minor infractions, bullying tactics, even rumors of misappropriated HOA funds. As the deadline passed, Ethan filed the paperwork to enforce the reversionary clause. The county recorder's office processed it with surprising speed, and just like that, Ethan owned the 10 acres. The HOA didn't realize it yet. They were too busy planning their annual summer barbecue on the very land they'd just lost. Ethan didn't gloat. He didn't need to. The real fireworks were coming, and he had a front row seat. The HOA's next move would determine whether they'd double down on their mistake or start scrambling to save face. Either way, Ethan was ready. The news hit Willow Creek like a thunderbolt. The county's public records update showed Ethan as the new owner of the 10-acre parcel. And the journalist's article dropped the same week, painting Barbara and the HOA as power-hungry bullies who'd overstepped one time too many. Residents began whispering, then arguing at mailboxes and over backyard fences. The clubhouse, the pool, the tennis courts. Gone, legally transferred to a single homeowner because of a clause no one had bothered to read. Barbara called an emergency HOA meeting, her face pale but her voice still sharp as she tried to spin the disaster. She blamed Ethan, the county, even the original developers, but the residents weren't buying it. They'd trusted her, paid their dues, followed her rules, and now their community's crown jewels were in the hands of the man they'd been told to shun. Ethan, meanwhile, played his next card. He didn't lock the gates or post no trespassing signs. Instead, he sent a letter to every resident, offering to lease the 10 acres back to the HOA for a nominal fee, on one condition. The gate blocking his road had to come down, and the HOA had to publicly acknowledge their mistake. It was a generous offer, but Barbara's pride wouldn't let her accept it. She rallied her loyalists, convincing them Ethan was extorting the community. They hired a new lawyer, a slick corporate type who promised to crush Ethan in court. The legal battle loomed, but Ethan wasn't worried. His deed was ironclad, his evidence meticulous, and the journalists' articles were turning public opinion in his favor. The HOA had stepped into his trap, and now they were thrashing, making it worse. The summer barbecue was canceled. The pool sat empty, and Willow Creek's perfect facade was crumbling. Ethan sat on his porch, watching the chaos unfold, knowing the final chapter was still to come. If you're hooked on this HOA showdown, hit that subscribe button, smash the like, and share this story with your friends. Stay tuned for the final chapter to see how Ethan's trap brings the HOA to its knees. You won't want to miss it.